What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a new edition of my personal NFL mock draft in terms of what I think these teams should do, as we are actually just a few days away from the NFL draft. So this is going to be version number 5, and the reason version number 5 is coming at the time that it is, you guys may notice on my lower right hand corner that I am recording this on April 24th. This is Monday, just like I said, just a few days before the NFL draft. And this is also shortly after the news just broke that Aaron Rodgers is officially going to be a New York Jet. The news just broke recently. There was many draft picks that were involved for both teams, and now that we have confirmation that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a New York Jet, how does that play out with the rest of the first round of the NFL draft? So how we're going to do this 2023 mock draft, at least for this first round, we're only going to do one round of my mock draft in terms of what I think teams should do, because according to my wife, one round is all that I can handle anyways. If you know, you know. But with that being said, hope you enjoy this mock draft version number 5 coming up to here. If you enjoy it, man, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button, and if you enjoy this mock draft coverage, as well as just a general fan of either college or NFL football, this is the channel for you, and I would highly recommend subscribing to this channel, as hitting that like and subscribe button gets us closer to that next like and subscribe. And with that being said, let's go ahead and hop right into it. Now, that being said, we jump into the very first round of the NFL draft, and we are here with the Carolina Panthers, who come in as the number 1 overall pick. Now, they traded up to the Chicago Bears, so it is a foregone conclusion that they are going to get a quarterback. But with that being said, where do they go for that quarterback position? Do they go to CJ Stroud, or do they go with Bryce Young? Now, CJ Stroud would be a better fit for what the Carolina Panthers are trying to do, as he fits more in terms of what Frank Reich wants out of his quarterbacks. But Bryce Young is also a very impressive quarterback who is able to go forth and have a very good college career. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, not from this season, but in the previous season he did win a Heisman Trophy. Very good resume himself. I really think that this is a 1A, 1B thing. I think that this is one of those things where I think both quarterbacks will have very good NFL careers. However, as I'm looking at it right now, I'm thinking of what's going to be a better fit for the Carolina Panthers. And at the end of the day, I think CJ Stroud is personally that guy. I think he is just barely the QB1. I think in most circumstances, I think Bryce Young would be the first quarterback selected out of this NFL draft. But I think Stroud is a better fit for the Carolina Panthers, and the margin is not really that different between these two quarterbacks, in my opinion. It could really go either way. So if you think Bryce Young is QB1 or should be QB1, I wouldn't blame you. If you think CJ Stroud should be QB1, I wouldn't argue with you either, as long as it's one of those two quarterbacks. But that being said, I'm going to go with CJ Stroud with my number 1 overall pick, having him go to the Carolina Panthers. And I think the Houston Texans, they're picking in the top 5. They're picking number 2. They also need to get themselves a quarterback as well. They tried it with David Mills, and I just don't think David Mills is the long-term answer at the quarterback position for the Houston Texans. So that being said, I think they go with Bryce Young here. So first 2 players I think are going to be quarterbacks. Now, with that being said, we get to the number 3 overall pick, and that is still held by the Arizona Cardinals. And the Cardinals, their quarterback position is actually in a better spot. The Arizona Cardinals, have Kyler Murray, and, say what you want about Kyler Murray, but he is a capable NFL starter. Definitely, they will not be picking quarterback here, but they do have some other needs. They need some help basically in the trenches, need some work in the offensive and defensive line, as well as get themselves some corners if that opportunity presents itself. Now, I think there's 2 blue chip guys, Jalen Carter and Will Anderson Jr., We know about the red flag concerns with Jalen Carter, though. Jalen Carter, had some things happen at Georgia, over the course of this draft process, which has caused some concerns to happen. So, with that being said, I don't think that the Arizona Cardinals go in the direction of Jalen Carter because of those red flag concerns. And in order to still work on their things on the defensive line, I think they go with Will Anderson Jr., who in my opinion is also a blue chip prospect and is going to be the first defensive player, in my opinion, that should come off the board. So 2 Alabama guys going with the first 3 picks in the first round. Then we go to pick number 4. It's the Indianapolis Colts. We're here with knowing that both CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are off the board. The tier 1 quarterbacks are gone, right? So they're going to need a quarterback. I don't think that they just kick that can down the road any further. And, PFF has Will Levis as a higher rated prospect than Anthony Richardson. And for Anthony Richardson, I disagree with that respectfully. And the reason why I don't agree with what PFF is doing is I just see Anthony Richardson as more of a high upside player at the end of the day. Anthony Richardson, of course, is insanely athletic. We all know this well and good, but at the same time, definitely have some things that he needs to work on. Just needs to get better at playing that quarterback position in general, but the upside is there, and he is my quarterback 3. So that being said, I am going to deviate from PFF a little bit here and go with Anthony Richardson as the 3rd quarterback to go off the board. Meanwhile, for the Seattle Seahawks, this is actually the first round pick that they took from Denver, thanks to the Russell Wilson trade that did transpire. And the Seattle Seahawks, they could get themselves a quarterback. And if they were going to go with a quarterback, possibly an Anthony Richardson, because I think he needs a little bit more seasoning than maybe a Will Levis, even though Will Levis has a lower ceiling. But Anthony Richardson is off the board, so I think they take care of one of their other needs, whether that be getting some more offensive linemen or getting some beef on the defensive front. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Jalen Carter did have those concerns in terms of maybe his character and off-the-field issues. So Jalen Carter, I feel, needs to go to a place where he has a good culture around him. And unlike the Arizona Cardinals, I do believe that the Seattle Seahawks do have that established culture. They have good leadership in that locker room. And because of that, I feel like the Seahawks can deal with those red flag concerns more so. And Jalen Carter is still an insanely talented football player. Don't get me wrong either. So I think Jalen Carter, therefore, would be perfect at number 5 going to the Seattle Seahawks. Now, at number 6, we do have the Detroit Lions coming up on the board. And since last time that we did a mock draft, the Detroit Lions, I've originally had them picking a corner here, Devin Witherspoon to be specific, but they've actually done some good work shoring up their defensive backfield. And it's a better defensive group overall than maybe what it was even a month ago. So with that being said, I do think that the Detroit Lions go in a little bit different of a direction than what they go with. And this might be a little bit of a hot take, but, beefing up that wide receiver room wouldn't be that bad of an idea either. You got St. Brown, but you have those suspensions in light of some of the couple of the receivers on the Detroit Lions deciding to take part in gambling. And, while doing it responsibly, I don't have a problem with. The NFL sees it differently, especially if you happen to bet on NFL games. So Jameson Williams is not going to be playing for a little bit. They're going to need some help in that receiving room, and they really want to capitalize on the opportunity to go forth and really take control of the NFC North. I think they could possibly win the division, to be honest with you. So using the Rams pick, I think they give, in my opinion, someone who really has emerged as the best wide receiver in this draft class. I'm going to rock with Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think that would be great for Jared Goff. You get an additional weapon to work with as well, and I think that's going to be a match made in heaven. Now, for the Las Vegas Raiders, They need quite a few things, actually. They need a quarterback, gotta get some offensive linemen as well, especially some help in the trenches, and a DB. They need all of those things, but they definitely need their new quarterback of the future in light of Derek Carr no longer being a Raider. He's now a part of the New Orleans Saints, and the Las Vegas Raiders, they can go with somebody who maybe isn't ready to start right away, but they can go with somebody who does have the ability to be a good starting quarterback. He does have a great arm on him. Definitely needs to work on some things, as well as I wasn't particularly impressed with Will Levis when I was looking at him through the draft process, but I still have him as my quarterback 4. So with that being said, I think the Raiders take Will Levis, but I also wouldn't be surprised if you don't see him on the field much his rookie season. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons are up next. They are picking with the 8th overall selection, and it says that they need a quarterback, but I disagree. I think they're going to ride things out with Desmond Ridder to see what do they have in Desmond Ridder. So maybe they use this opportunity to work on other parts of their roster as well. I think they go for a defensive lineman, and specifically somebody who really had a great combine, who put together some good stats, and part of a very dominant defensive line, I should say, at Georgia. Again, might be a little bit of a hot take here, but I'm going to go with Nolan Smith with the 8th overall pick. As for the Carolina Panthers, not the Carolina Panthers, the Chicago Bears, they traded down with the Carolina Panthers, I should say. So the Chicago Bears, they still need some help on the offensive line. They've really been hammering out free agency pretty well, so not as many needs as what they were seen to have when we were moving through the offseason. But Devin Witherspoon, someone that is surprisingly falling in this mock draft. That's just how the board happened to fall. So I'm going to go with Devin Witherspoon in order to reinforce that defensive backfield. So now we jump into the 10th overall selection in the NFL draft, and this is held by the Philadelphia Eagles. They traded for this pick away from the New Orleans Saints. So the Philadelphia Eagles, could use some help filling out their roster. They're just coming off of a Super Bowl run as well. What's going to help them maintain that Super Bowl supremacy? I think it's really important to maintain control in the trenches. And in this case, I really like Peter Sikowski in this particular slot here. Peter Sikowski, yes, he is listed as a tackle from Northwestern, but he's somebody that does have the ability to play all 5 positions on the offensive line, including snapping the football at center too, if absolutely need be, right? So I think Peter Sikowski makes a lot of sense there at Northwestern, so I'm going to go with him with the 10th overall pick. And speaking of offensive linemen, the Tennessee Titans, they certainly could use some offensive linemen as well, as I don't know what their future holds. They are starting to gear towards a rebuild, and with a lot of the veterans on this team being released or being traded, it's important to hit on your draft picks, and particularly they do need some help at wide receiver, and they do need some help on the offensive line as well. But if you don't have quality offensive linemen to protect either Ryan Tannehill, Malik Willis, or a quarterback that isn't on the roster yet that could start for the Titans in the future, it's going to be a lot harder to get the ball to your receivers, right? Even though that is a need. But that being said, I think Paris Johnson Jr. makes a lot of sense here at pick number 11, and that's what I'm going to be rocking with as well. Now, with pick number 12 is the Houston Texans' second first-round pick they got from the Deshaun Watson trade over to the Cleveland Browns. So they're picking with the 12th overall selection. They already got their quarterback of the future in Bryce Young, but do we go towards the direction of getting him some weapons or getting him to a spot where they got to work on some other spots in the roster? And they certainly need some help in the trenches too. So in that case, I think Elijah Cansey makes a lot of sense here for the Texans. Get a premium defensive player in this draft, a top 15 prospect. So that's, I think, what the Texans should do with their 12th overall pick. Now, the Green Bay Packers, they did move up a couple of spots. 13, and this is in light of the Aaron Rodgers trade as well. Not only did they receive the 13th overall pick, they also received the 2nd and 6th round pick in this year's NFL draft, and they also received a conditional 2nd round pick that can turn into a first if Rodgers plays 65% of the plays in this upcoming season, which, if he doesn't get hurt, that seems very likely to happen. So could end up being a first round pick for the Packers next offseason. But they are selecting with the number 13 overall pick. Yes, quarterback could be a need depending on how Jordan Love ends up playing this upcoming season. But if you want to give Jordan Love the biggest opportunity possible to allow him to succeed, you got to give him some weapons. And I think Dalton Kincaid, sitting as the number 10 prospect, I think Dalton Kincaid's got to be the person you select if you're the Green Bay Packers. Got to give Jordan Love the best opportunity possible in order to be successful. Meanwhile, for the New England Patriots, they are at number 14. And the New England Patriots, they're in a spot right now to where they just need dynamic players. They need some dynamic athletes. They're a well-coached team. And I mean, Bill Belichick's one of the best to ever do it in terms of the coaching profession. But they definitely need some dynamic athletes there at number 14. And Myles Murphy, he showed a lot maybe in his 2021 tape, but not necessarily that much in 2022. So that's why he hasn't been selected yet. However, that being said, I still see him as this first-round talent here, and I feel like you got to get an edge rusher, and Myles Murphy here, I think, should be the selection for the New England Patriots. Meanwhile, the Jets traded back from number 13 to number 15 in order to get Aaron Rodgers, and they also received a 5th-round pick in this year's draft as well. So at number 15... could be a spot where they could possibly trade back, maybe not, but I'm looking at Broderick Jones being the answer simply because you got to get an offensive lineman. It is a need for the New York Jets. Malachi Becton, he hasn't been able to stay on the field, hasn't quite worked out, and Aaron Rodgers is getting older. This is still a quarterback that is capable of being a top 10 quarterback in this league, but he's not in his prime anymore. The clock is ticking. In the meantime, you got to give him some help on the offensive side of the ball, and the most important thing is keep Aaron Rodgers upright. The less he gets hit, the less likely he is to get injured. Granted, he is a tough kid, so go with Broderick James here with the number 15 overall selection. I do think that makes a lot of sense. Meanwhile, for the Washington Commanders, they're picking at number 16, and I think this could actually be a spot where we see our first draft day trade. We're going to go look around and see what's out there right now in the peripherals, and I do think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could certainly be a team that tries to move up, going to try to move up free selections because the Commanders, they don't really need anybody at 16 and still want to get some talent around them. Could be a quarterback here, but, I don't like any quarterbacks here at 16, to be honest with you guys. So I'm going to have the Commanders move down and trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who move up to the number 16 pick. And with that number 16 pick, they definitely need some safety help. They definitely need a quarterback, need some offensive linemen as well. Tight end could be a place to go if you wanted to do that, but end of the day, I think Tampa Bay may go with the safety from Alabama, going with Brian Branch. I think that's the answer here, and hopefully, if you're the Buccaneers, maybe go with a Hendon Hooker, Tanner McKee if you can't get him in the later rounds, but, for another need, Brian Branch could meet that. And speaking of corners, I do think that we see possibly a little bit of a run on corners here. Pittsburgh Steelers, they're in the same division as the Cincinnati Bengals, who have Jamar Chase. They have T. Higgins, and they also have Tyler Boyd. That is a problem, and you got to play those guys 2 times a year. So if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think you go... And DB is also a need as well. That's another thing in this equation too. Get yourself a corner that has the ability to really cover extremely well. And I think Christian Gonzalez could be an impact player day 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So That being said, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers do go with Christian Gonzalez, who did fall a little bit in this mock draft, which again, sometimes that just happens. That's not because the player is bad or anything. That's just sometimes how the board falls, and it's an imperfect science. Meanwhile, for the Detroit Lions, this is their second first-round pick, and back in pick number 6, they grabbed Jackson Smith-Njigba. And at this number 18 slot, as of right now, they could get a tight end or an interior defensive lineman. Why not get yourself another weapon? You traded away TJ Hockenson over the course of the season. He is now with the Minnesota Vikings, at least that's to my knowledge. Michael Mayer here makes a lot of sense for Detroit Lions at number 18. Continue to really build just an absolutely potent offense down in Detroit and really go for that NFC North ring. Meanwhile, for the Washington Commanders, still in a spot where, maybe you could go best available possibly. You're not going to try to trade down again. Could you go with Darnell White? That could be an option, actually. Darnell White would not be a bad choice really at all, actually. Darnell White, yes, he's listed as tackle, but like Peter Sikowski, has that ability to play guard, and the Commanders, they need guards as well. So you go grab Darnell Wright, get yourself somebody that has the ability to play multiple positions on the offensive line. I think that's certainly important, so I think that's the selection they should go with if you're the Washington Commanders. Meanwhile, with the number 20 selection, we got the Seattle Seahawks, who did previously grab themselves Jalen Carter with the number 5 overall pick. Could go with yet another defensive lineman or an interior offensive lineman. Or if you're the Seahawks, why not trade back possibly if you wanted to do that? Ravens would definitely be interested with moving forward because they could use a wide receiver or a corner. And yeah, you know what? I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to switch, give Seattle the number 22 pick and the number 157 pick, and that trade will go through. So we'll have the Baltimore Ravens pick at number 20 instead of the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm going to give the same logic that I did for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, you're playing the Bengals. How do you counteract the Bengals? Get corners that can cover. And Deonte Banks, I view him as a slightly better corner than Joey Porter Jr. Just didn't show because Maryland, not as talented of a football team as the Penn State Nittany Lions. But I do view Deonte Banks as a slightly better prospect than Joey Porter Jr. So I'm going to be rocking with Deonte Banks. Now, as for the Los Angeles Chargers, they're picking at 21. Miami forfeited their first round pick due to tampering charges. They also could use a corner as well, and Joey Porter Jr. could absolutely be a steal at the end of the day. So I know the Chargers going to be really excited about that. But Seahawks, they're back here, guard and center. Bijan Robinson could be that person that you could go after, but I think that they're also going to take some time to really beef up that defensive line. And Luka Van Ness is still on the board. So for the Seahawks, I'm going to grab Luka Van Ness with the 22nd overall pick. Now, with the 23rd overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings, they certainly could use themselves a wide receiver, that's for sure, as Adam Thielen, he left. So there needs to be someone who's capable of being a number 2 besides Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, as amazing of a football player as he is, he can't do everything, right? He can't be that person. So Minnesota, I think they go for a wide receiver, and one of the best players available on the board is Jordan Addison, who I think sits in as someone that has the ability to put in a pretty good role as a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL and would be good for the Minnesota Vikings. Meanwhile, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are up next with the 24th overall pick in this year's NFL draft and could go with Anton Harrison, but he's only a tackle. I don't really see him being an interior offensive lineman, which is what the Jacksonville Jaguars need. They could go for an edge rusher. They also need some help at DB. And Emmanuel Forbes is really interesting to me. He really catches my eye here at pick number 24 because, yes, he's only 170 pounds, if that. He's not a very big person at all, and that could be a little bit of a concern, but those same concerns were for Devontae Smith. And, Devontae Smith is a very good player in the NFL. Plus, Emmanuel Forbes, he led the NCAA FBS in pick 6. This is a guy that knows how to play football, and that's why he's being seen as a first-round pick the way that he is. So I think the Jacksonville Jaguars will go with Emmanuel Forbes in this particular spot. Meanwhile, the New York Giants are here at number 25, and with the 25th overall pick, gotta get some receiving help. You just signed Daniel Jones to a long-term deal. You also have Saquon Barkley, who is on the franchise tag, so it's really important, at least on the offensive side of the ball, get some guys who are on rookie deals and could be impact players. And if Daniel Jones is ever going to live up to the contract that he has just now received over the course of his offseason, he needs good receivers. And Quentin Johnson at number 25, that makes a lot of sense here for the New York Giants to go grab. So because of that, I will grab the receiver from TCU for the New York Giants. And then at 26, listen, Zeke is a free agent. Tony Pollard, he's on the franchise tag, so who knows if they'll be able to keep him long-term either. This is just a match made in heaven, Mike. Bijan Robinson, Texas guy, played his college football in Austin, Texas, not too far from Dallas. I don't really need to explain why this pick makes sense. You just got to go do it. So Bijan Robinson to the Dallas Cowboys feels very Jerry Jones-esque, and Bijan Robinson, it just makes sense to see him in the star, right? It just does. So, only 5 more picks left in the first round to wrap up the first round of the NFL mock draft. We're here at number 27 now. We got the Buffalo Bills that are up next, in need of interior defensive linemen. Also could use a linebacker. Also could use a corner as well. Now, Buffalo, they... looking at what's available at this point in the draft, not really anybody here that's first round caliber, in my opinion, that fits the needs of what Buffalo needs. So, no one's really interested in a trade with Buffalo Bills for the 27th overall pick either. So, I do think that they could go with a best player available approach, and I think Anton Harrison is the best player available. You just got to figure it out sometimes. Can't always be need over talent necessarily, especially if the need is not like if it's too much of a reach, right? So Anton Harrison, I think, would make a lot of sense as a best player available kind of pick, which leads to Cincinnati Bengals at number 28. Now, number 28, similar predicament here, right? So not really anybody that fits what Cincinnati needs. They really short off that offensive line. They got Orlando Brown in free agency. So that offensive line is looking pretty darn good, especially if it stays healthy. So don't really see them going after a tackle. Again, same spot. I think that in this case, I think Cincinnati just goes for the best player available here as well. And in that case, Tyree Wilson falls to number 28. Tyree Wilson, I think, is that dude. And Tyree Wilson going to the Cincinnati Bengals, that could be a home run hit. As for the New Orleans Saints, they're picking with the 29th overall selection here in this NFL draft. And, with the 29th overall pick, they could use some help on the defensive line. So I think Will McDonald IV makes a lot of sense here. So I'll pick them for the 29th overall pick. For pick number 30, still need that interior offensive line help. Osiris Torrance is still here. Very quality offensive lineman from the University of Florida. So Osiris Torrance going to the Eagles could make a lot of sense there too. And then finally to wrap up the 2023 NFL Draft, the first round, my final first round selection. Lots of good choices out there still, but I'm going to go with Felix Anaduke Uzama, the edge rusher out of Kansas State, in order to shore up that defensive line. So guys, that is actually going to wrap things up for my version number 5 of this NFL mock draft this year. What do you guys think? Do you agree with what I'm going with? Are you smelling what I'm stepping in? Let me know down in the comments, and if you don't agree with me, feel free to tell me why. And this also took quite a bit of effort to really think about what I want to do, especially given what just happened with the Aaron Rodgers trade as well. So I would really appreciate it if you went ahead and smacked that like button if you enjoyed this particular NFL mock draft. Hit that subscribe button if you do have to be brand new. You enjoy your fair share of mock drafts here in NFL draft season. And if you're just a college football or NFL fan in general, you like that college football gaming on a year-round basis, this is certainly the channel for you. And also, like I said before, that like and subscribe gets us closer to that next like and subscribe. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. I hope you guys enjoy this mock draft. But in the meantime, this is John J Gaming on the mic signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.